they will sing songs of it.
Forward! Stand your ground!
My patience has its bounds. Have I not shown you mercy? This is finished. Rhaenyra Targaryen says that line in the new mid-season trailer, and it lands differently than anything she said before in this entire series. Because this isn't a queen negotiating. This isn't a claimant making her case to lords who won't listen. This is a woman who has been patient for so long that the patience itself has become a wound, and she is done bleeding quietly. The Dance of the Dragons just shifted into a gear this show has been building towards since day one, and the footage we just got covers everything from episode 5 all the way into what looks unmistakably like the Battle of Tumbleton in episode 7. Armies are marching, dragons are circling, Criston Cole is covered in mud and losing his mind somewhere in the Riverlands. And buried inside this trailer are visual details so specific and so deliberate that once you see them, you cannot unsee them. And they change how you understand not just this season, but the entire magical framework this show has been quietly constructing around the war. Let's go through every frame. The sequence that hits first and hardest is Rhaenyra in the Red Keep, on the throne, actually on it, crown on her head, the Iron Throne beneath her the way it was always supposed to be. Team Black has been waiting for this image for 3 seasons and the show gives it to you, and then immediately shows you the cost. Because the very next shot is Rhaenyra in her father's old bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep on her first night inside the castle her father promised her. The war is won enough to take the seat. The war is not won enough to rest. And that gap between the two is where this character lives right now. The small council scene is where the line lands. She is exasperated in a way that reads as someone who has been managing impossible people for too long and has finally decided managing is over. Her patience has run out, she tells them. Based on the context the trailer builds around it, this almost certainly connects to the Hightower army's continued presence in the Reach, the threat that refuses to dissolve just because she's sitting on the throne, and to the specific political impossibility of being a queen who has the seat, but not yet the complete surrender. Now here's the detail in this trailer that I cannot stop thinking about, and I want you to look at it carefully, because it is easy to miss if you're watching at normal speed. There is an overhead shot of Rhaenyra walking away from the Iron Throne wearing her crown. And if you look at the melted swords that form the base of the throne in that specific angle, the structural pattern they create looks remarkably like a raven. Not loosely, not if you squint, deliberately. It evokes the three-eyed raven imagery with enough specificity that it cannot be accidental. And once you see that, the context around it becomes overwhelming. Daemon has been deep in visions at Harrenhal all season, visions that are directly tied to the future of Brynden Rivers, the Blood Raven who eventually becomes the three-eyed raven that Bran Stark encounters centuries later. The show is embedding the deep magical lore of the old gods and the Weirwood network into the physical architecture of the Red Keep itself, the seat of Targaryen political power, sitting inside a visual echo of the oldest magical tradition in Westeros. That is not a coincidence. That is the show telling you that everything happening in this war exists inside a much larger magical current that none of the characters fully understand, which connects directly to the ongoing question about Helaena, because the trailer expands her storyline in ways that push the lore conversation even further. The show has clearly taken her abilities beyond what the books establish for her. And the question it is now openly raising is whether she possesses standard Targaryen dragon dreams, which are essentially prescient glimpses, visions of future possibilities filtered through a personal lens, or something closer to true green sight. The distinction matters enormously. Dragon dreams are personal. Green sight connects to the old gods, allows access to the past as well as the future. Bran Stark, the three-eyed raven, that tradition. The connection that makes this question so fascinating is Alys Rivers. She appears to have ties to House Blackwood, which is the bloodline that eventually produces Brynden Rivers himself. If Alys Rivers carries some version of green sight, and if she is deliberately cultivating and manipulating Aemond's deteriorating psychological state to serve her own agenda, then what's happening at Harrenhal is not just a woman playing a dangerous game with a Targaryen. It is someone with genuine magical knowledge using that knowledge to control the most powerful living weapon the Greens have. That is a level of threat that operates completely outside the war's conventional military logic. Let's talk about Aemond in this trailer, because his spiral is one of the most visually striking threads in the entire preview. We see him shirtless, practicing with Blackfire, the ancestral Valyrian steel sword of Aegon the Conqueror, directly next to the Heart Tree in Harrenhal's Godswood. The imagery of Aemond training with that specific sword in that specific location is loaded. Blackfire was the sword that symbolized Targaryen legitimacy and the right to rule, and it has been sitting at the center of succession conflicts throughout this dynasty's history. Aemond wielding it next to a heart tree, but is connected to old god magic, is the show putting his deteriorating mental state inside a framework of enormous historical and magical weight. He declares in voiceover that Rhaenyra has defiled their great house. The conviction in it is genuine, but it's conviction that Alys Rivers has been carefully feeding and shaping. Her goal has always been Harrenhal, to secure it for herself, to anchor herself to this place of enormous magical significance. And the method is Aemond, keeping him isolated, keeping him volatile, keeping him pointed outward so he never turns a clear eye toward what's actually happening to him in that castle. She is using his genuine beliefs as a lever, and he cannot see it because he's already too far in. Now let's get into the military threads, because this trailer is building toward the Battle of Tumbleton with a real sense of accumulating weight. Criston Cole's arc in this footage deserves particular attention, because his situation has moved from struggling to genuinely desperate in a way the visuals make impossible to ignore. He is covered in mud, he is exhausted, and he is missing his Kingsguard armor, which, if you understand what that armor means to him, when it has always represented as the external proof of his identity and his worth, is not a minor costume detail. It is the show telling you something fundamental about where this man is psychologically. The event the footage appears to be building toward is something the books call the Butcher's Ball. The context: Cole is on the run from Rivermen and Stark forces, specifically the Winter Wolves under Roderick Dustin, and the trailer shows him trying to convince Ormund Hightower to launch a suicidal attack against a force that massively outnumbers them. Ormund's expression in response to this plan clearly communicates that he believes Cole has completely lost his grip on tactical reality. And he might be right. Cole's battlefield luck has been extraordinary for most of this war. The mud and the missing armor suggest it has finally run out. On the other side of the coming conflict, Daemon is leading the Rivermen and the Winter Wolves toward Tumbleton, and he is wearing a new battle helmet that has shed the ceremonial dragon wing design in favor of something purely functional. That choice, aesthetic grandeur replaced by practical combat utility, tells you something about how seriously Daemon is taking what's coming. The Dragonseeds hovering above Tumbleton are where the emotional stakes get genuinely complicated. Hugh Hammer is visible in the footage, riding Vermithor over the occupied city, and his expression communicates something closer to dread than triumph. We established in the episode prior that his wife is trapped inside Tumbleton's walls. He has the Bronze Fury, one of the most powerful dragons in the war, and he cannot use it fully because of what that firepower would do to the woman he loves inside those walls. That is a specific and devastating trap, and the show is not being subtle about laying it. Ulf the White appears in the camp footage, making what is clearly some kind of crass joke, and whatever he says rubs Hugh visibly wrong. The fracture line forming between these two Dragonseeds is important. Both came to Rhaenyra's side without the noble background, without the established loyalty, without the deep ties to the Black Cause. They came because they had dragon blood, and the war needed riders. That kind of conditional loyalty has limits, and the conditions at Tumbleton are stressing those limits in real time. The Rhaena and Sheepstealer confirmation is a significant lore development for book readers and a fascinating adaptation choice for everyone else. The brief shot of Rhaena in the Vale, dealing with the wild dragon, lines up with a theory the book reading community has been advancing since her character was introduced: that the show is merging her arc with the character of Nettles. In the source material, Nettles is a Dragonseed of unclear identity who bonds with Sheepstealer and operates somewhat independently from the main Black faction. If Rhaena claims Sheepstealer and eventually operates under the name Nettles to obscure her true identity as the war gets messier and more dangerous for anyone tied to the Targaryen name, that is a quietly enormous change to her trajectory. It gives her an arc that the show's version of her has not yet had the space to develop fully. The showrunner's note about Cannibal and Grey Ghost potentially appearing by Season 4 is the kind of information that lands differently depending on your relationship with the lore. For people who know what those dragons are and what they represent in the larger history of Dragonstone, the idea that we might see them on screen is genuinely staggering. Grey Ghost and Cannibal are not just wild dragons. They are pieces of the ecosystem that make Dragonstone dangerous even before the war turns it into something apocalyptic. Their presence in the story would expand what the show is able to do with the mythology of this world significantly. The brief shots of Aegon at Rook's Rest clutching a scale from Sunfire carry a very specific emotional register. This is a man at his lowest point, holding on to the one thing that still connects him to what he was before the war took everything from him. Sunfire was not just his dragon. In the dynamic of Aegon's character, someone who never wanted the throne, who was elevated into a role he was not prepared for, who has been broken and rebuilt and broken again, the dragon was the relationship that felt chosen rather than inherited. Holding a single scale while the carcass rots nearby is one of the most quietly devastating images the show has produced for him. The funeral procession featuring Alan of Hall is deliberately mysterious, and the ambiguity around whose funeral it is and what it means for his arc is clearly intentional. Alan has been one of the most interesting additions to this season's cast, and the show keeping his storyline somewhat obscured even in the mid-season trailer suggests his arc has developments coming that they don't want to give away yet. What this trailer is ultimately assembling is a picture of a war that has reached the point where every advantage costs something irreplaceable. Rhaenyra has the throne and cannot sleep on it. Hugh has the most powerful new dragon and cannot use it fully. Aemond has a legendary sword and the vision of a woman who has decided what to do with him. Criston Cole has conviction and is about to lose everything else. And underneath all of it, in the weirwood trees and the three-eyed raven imagery, and the question of what Helaena actually is and what Alys Rivers actually wants, there is a magical current running through this war that none of the people fighting it are paying nearly enough attention to. So here's what I need from you. The Helaena question, dragon dreams or true greensight? And the Rhaenyra and Nettles merge, is that an adaptation you're on board with, or does losing the book version of that character feel like a real loss to you? Drop everything in the comments, because the back half of this season is coming fast, and I want to be in this conversation with you before it all unfolds.